So, welcome back to the third episode of a new podcast, which has been slightly rebranded as the Theatres of Dreams podcast, a podcast about football, a podcast about Manchester football, and sometimes a podcast about Manchester United in particular. With me is Tom Jolley, who has a show on Radio Walty on a Saturday. It is the Sound of Sport. Soundtrack to sport. I'm Rod Maxwell. I can't even remember our own shows. I Manchester United fan and fellow presenter in Radio Alta. I do the late lunch show, and I am a passionate football fan, a very passionate Manchester United fan. Tom, let's just talk. Let's just get it over with. The FA Cup at the weekend. I can't remember what we were thinking last week. I don't think any of us were particularly confident. What was your take on the result last weekend?
It was expected, I think. I think I was one of them that I literally probably about like thousands of people at Wembley. You literally walked into the room, into the stands, and Gundogan's already scored. It's one of them typical Sunday league type things. If you get your first tackle and you get your first header in, and we failed to do so, and you can't fail to do so to do that against a Man City team that are this good.
The thing for me was they had three touches, all of them unchallenged in the first 12 seconds, and he scores a worldie, and it's a beautiful strike.
Yeah, I remember saying to Dom while I was at Dom's house, who we had on as a guest last week, and I was saying to him, I was like, although we shouldn't be conceding that, it's a good, really good finish, isn't it?
It's a beautiful
it's
finish.
Really well struck, and you wouldn't put it against anyone in Man City's team to score that. Never mind just Gundogan. So, yeah.
Yeah, but 12 seconds, the fastest FA Cup goal in history. I think it beats the last one by 18 seconds. I think it was 30 seconds.
The fastest Premier League goal is only 7 or 8 seconds, and that was Shane Long versus Watford. So to think there's only a 4 second gap between the record Premier League goal scorer in the fastest one, and for us to concede in an FA Cup final like that, it's ridiculous.
And the funny thing is, I myself and my son Adam set off about 7:30 in the morning, headed down by road because, of course, the trains were cancelled. And I wouldn't say there was an air of optimism, but when you're in a final, you think anything's possible, anything. Yeah. But the thing that both of us were saying as we're going down is just keep it tight for 20, 25 minutes.
Yeah.
And I think I may have said this last week, but my view was get into the City fans or players because they're going to have one eye on the weekend. Nobody want to get injured for that weekend. And we didn't even get a chance to do that, Tom.
I think we did see this sort of ratty, spiteful side of City come out during the final, though, because you saw a lot of the Haaland was getting quite agitated up front. As much as he had a quite dire game for his standards, he was still brilliant when he got the ball. Apart from when he slipped and had that chance where he could have scored. Then you had Bernardo Silva at half time with Bruno Fernandes. They're both international teammates, yet Bernardo Silva's pushing him away angrily. But obviously they're discussing the Jack Grealish penalty decision, which I'm sure we'll get onto. But in my opinion, clear penalty. In the replay, you can see his hand up in the air. The ball hits his finger and you can see his hand shake. So, I mean, we've had loads of really ridiculous handballs all season against us, haven't we? So, as a person who's conceded a lot this season, I think we can say we'll take that one, thankfully, because realistically, if we hadn't got that penalty, we would have been. They could have been 3 or 4. I think.
Without doubt, but for me, we didn't turn up, right? And I didn't see a response at all. But we'll come back to that because we're going to be joined by a guest on the show. Last week, Rick Varden, he's going to be joining us, giving his view as well. Be back in a minute. So it's the Theatre of Dreams podcast, episode 3, and we're just joined by Rick Varden, a long-time Manchester United fan, somebody who was on the podcast with us last week, and good to get him back as well. Rick, myself and Tom were just talking about our reaction to the FA Cup, and I think, my summary was we never turned up. City played within themselves. We were lucky it was only 2-1. What did you make of it?
I think what you have to do, I think it might be being a little bit harsh there. I think you have to put it into context of where United are. we're not anywhere near Manchester City, and I think most United fans have to accept that. Like they and others, like Liverpool, were nowhere near us when we dominated the Premier League for 20 years. So it's a similar thing, really. It's revisiting that. So I did say, I think on the podcast last week, that they needed to get a grip on Gundogan and De Bruyne, and they obviously had no answer. They had no answer for that.
I mean,
I obviously didn't expect. Yeah, I didn't expect the goal that quickly. I don't think anybody did. But I actually think that they did their best under the circumstances. You may disagree. Did their best in the sense of the team we had out there. The one player I didn't, the only way I can agree with, the one player I didn't think turned up, to be honest, was Jadon Sancho, because every time he received a ball in the penalty area, he gave it away. He should never have started. I mean, Ryan Giggs was given his big chance at 17. I think Garnacho should have started, and that's where I'm at. So
I agree with that. And actually, Sancho has been one of the most frustrating players of late. And I know he's had some sort of issues or whatever. Don't know what they are, but he just doesn't. He didn't turn it on. That said, though, the thing for me was, yes, we got our goal on 30 minutes, and not a bad goal, but I don't know. I didn't see a good enough response after going down, and I've said this thing in the last podcast. I didn't see enough galvanization and I didn't see enough of the big players grab the game, grab our players by the scruff of the neck, and just concentrate a bit more.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I mean, to be honest, for his 18 years, I think the only player who tried to grab the game by the scruff of the neck was Garnacho when he came on. You know what I mean? And to a small degree, Weghorst. I mean, I know we've all got our opinions about, he doesn't score goals, but he does put himself about. I think he did try and put himself about a bit, but it was too little too late. But at least we didn't get hammered.
Yeah.
And we have to just, swallow the bitter pill. Hopefully, it won't turn into a treble on Saturday.
We'll come that in a minute. But
and get on with the season and hope that we can make.
I'll just link that back to Rick's point about saying how far the gap is between Man United and City, and say you can even just look at the team graphics before the game of the benches compared to each other. Off the bench, we've got Garnacho, Pellistri, and who was our other Weghorst. There are three attacking options off the bench. Manchester City can bring on Julian Alvarez, who's a World Cup winner. They can bring on Phil Foden, who's arguably the best youngster in the league on his day. They've got the likes of they've got such a good bench, and I know they've spent money on it, but that team on their bench, their second team would beat our first team.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean,
yeah, but can I just come in quickly there? I'm not having a dig at City. Remember what's behind all those signings.
Yeah.
Let's remember the investigation. So
150.
We can say this, but they've got those players on that bench because they had the financial wherewithal to be able to bring them in, and it is up to some sort of tribunal to decide whether that was fair or not.
I think this is where this independent regulator needs to come in. I know it's a separate topic, but this independent regulator over the whole league, instead of, I think we saw, I don't know if you've seen the overlap with, I can't think of his name. Gary Neville was interviewing the Crystal Palace chairman, and they were saying that the other clubs have no say in these charges against City because it's seen unfair. But that's only just happened in the recent year. Against this. So as soon as this independent regulator, put together by the government, as soon as that comes in, that should be a big standpoint to say there will always be some, even if they do win the treble, there will always be some sort of asterisk against it because of these charges.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there is a lot of substance in it. And this might sound ridiculous, but reverse psychology is something I believe in a lot. And Pep Guardiola uses it very often. And when he came out a week or two ago and saying, we want this sorting out now. We don't want it dragging on for 2 years. What he's really saying is I think we're going to have some sort of major sanction put against us. I want to know what that is now so I can get on my bike and find another job. I think he knows they're going to get hammered, but it's when.
I think
it could take 2 years.
He did also say about that he said no matter what the charges in another interview, he will stay. But obviously, not a lot of managers do stick to their word with things like that. So obviously, you never know, do you?
I personally,
I don't think he would be left with much choice, and I don't think I think whether he was around there at that time or not, people have to take responsibility. So I do think that there will be some sort of sanction. I'm not sure what it will be, though.
I personally believe that the Qataris and other big club owners have got too much influence in FIFA and the FA, etc., for this to really stick as hard as it is. And I don't actually believe much is going to come from it. I think whatever it is, there'll be some sort of impact, but it'll not be reversing any titles, etc., It'll be a future forward impact, possibly penalty, reduction of maybe spend. I don't think they'll reverse anything. And to be honest, for me now, I'm past actually. What's that?
The only thing I can see coming from it was, when Chelsea got this the transfer ban, the transfer embargo. That's the only thing I can see coming from it. But realistically, that's not going to affect City that much with the team they have. So.
No, to be honest with you, it's done and dusted. The thing I loved about the final, right, was you saw the blue and the red, right? Manchester came together. I didn't see any problem, at all in the game. And I saw, funny enough, going down the motorway, I happened to pick the service stations that were full of City fans, and then you would have the odd United fan who clearly is the one token member of the family who's a red in the car. I must have not applied by the right route, but my son and I don't wear match day colours. But it was in some ways a lovely festival of football. Forget about the result, and I know the result is important, but at the end of the day, seeing Manchester and the way that the BBC radio DJ did the sort of tunes where you had City tunes, you had United tunes, it was a bit of a sing-off, etc. It was good crack, really good crack, and having a drink before in Wembley, and I've got to say the facilities in Wembley are good. You can get a drink, you can go to the toilet in good time, not like Old Trafford. And you met up with people, I had some of which I've never met before. We all had a good chat, and it was good. It was a good day out, but the result wasn't what we would want it to be. Well, the thing I'd also say about Wembley, though, is I don't know if you've been there, but getting out of the stadium is a nightmare because you've got one major tube stop, which is Wembley Central, and you've got 90,000 people all heading to that at the same time. If it wasn't for the fact the City fans were staying to collect their trophy, it took something like 50 minutes to get out of the stadium into the tube stop, and that was with only 50% of the fans actually piling out. Why Wembley didn't build another tube station the other side, so you had two tube stations, I don't know. Not helped probably by the trains, but that side of things, the infrastructure side of things, awful. Great stadium to go and watch football at. Terrible stadium to get to, I've got to say. But there you go. That was the FA Cup. And to be honest, you come back and you reflect and say, look, we had a good season. We got third in the Premier League. We're going to play Champions League football next year. We got an FA Cup, and we know the players that need to go. We know the players, we know the positions we want players in for. We had a good season, and that was a bit of a distraction for me, really, Let's talk about the transfer gossip.
Yeah, I mean, sorry.
Go on, Rick.
Oh, so we didn't say transfer. Oh, sorry, Rick. Do you want to go?
No, you carry on with the transfers.
So with the transfers, so we've seen in the last week Fabrizio Romano and LinkedIn with the Athletic doing the same stories of Mason Mount to Manchester United. He was approached by Martin Brundle at the F1 Racing, Barcelona, and he sort of laughed it off and didn't really have a reply. Apparently, according to Fabrizio Romano of Sky Italy, Chelsea want between 70 to 80 million for Mason Mount. United are not willing to pay more than 45 to 50. So that's one name on the shortlist. We've got Napoli's Kim Min-jae. He's just won the Scudetto for Napoli. Voted best defender in Serie A. We sent scouts to him in October and January, and there's links of us and along with other clubs in Europe looking at him. But we are so-called the front runners at the minute. He's got a release clause that can be bought out in as July starts. We're looking at the goalkeepers. There's not much apart from Dean Henderson's really close to leaving for Nottingham Forest. We're looking at David De Gea is probably going to be signing a new contract, and if United are going to be bringing in another goalkeeper, it's looking like it's going to be a younger one rather than say that spending 80 million on a Diogo Costa from Sporting or David Raya from Brentford. And then the last name on the list is Højlund, who's a Norwegian striker from Atalanta. He's had 3 seasons in Serie A, and we're looking at him as a possible option if we don't get Harry Kane.
Well, yeah, I was looking at that Højlund. The name's a bit too close to Haaland, isn't it?
Yeah,
but it's very similar sort of stature as well, isn't he? He's over 6 foot, the blonde hair and all that. But apparently he is quite a good prospect. So somebody like that might be good. However, I think I voiced my opinion last week on the fact that we need goals and we need them now. So I'm still sold on Harry Kane, although I know Rod will disagree. And I think the Harry Kane thing will ramble on till almost the last kick of the transfer window, to be honest.
I mean, I'll link it in with the Harry Kane thing I was saying to you, Rod.
Yeah.
So Harry Kane is looking, obviously Real Madrid, for those who don't know, Benzema has just left Real Madrid for a Saudi team. The whole Saudi league thing's a whole nother story that we can get into on either later on today or another podcast. But he's obviously just left Real Madrid. So Real Madrid have only got 2 attackers for next season. They're looking at Harry Kane for their striker. But the Spurs board, obviously, they've just got a new manager looking to get Postecoglou from Celtic. But Harry Kane has told the Spurs board to buy Harry Maguire, according to reports from The Athletic. So that's saying that, from my point of view, that's saying the board are doing whatever they can to please Harry Kane to make him stay at the club. Because I don't see him personally going to Real Madrid because I think he wants that Shearer's goal scoring record. But I think Spurs will do everything in their power to keep him.
Yeah, it's whether he's going to take that gamble, isn't it, and carry on to the end of his career, a bit like Alan Shearer, who only ended up with one trophy, from all his goals. So it is a big gamble. But I would like to see us sign him, but whether that's ever going to happen, I don't know.
I just don't think we will. I see us going for more of a younger profile striker. In the summer, preferably, I'd want 2 strikers. I think you need this younger Højlund. If we can snatch him from Atalanta for say 30 million, happily. But I think we need the dream transfer window will be Harry Kane and Højlund realistically, because we need them 2 strikers. I know, Rod, you said last week you want to go back to this in sort of the 1990s when we had 4 strikers in the team. At the minute, we haven't even got barely one, really, have we? So I'd say looking at Højlund, maybe you look, obviously the Osimhen thing, the story keeps going around, but to be honest, the price tag, although he scored a lot of goals, he's not Premier League proven. I think that could be an issue if we were to buy him. So they're the signings for United. But moving
is that the guy at Napoli you're talking about? Yeah.
Victor Osimhen of Napoli. He's won best attacker of Serie A. Obviously won the Scudetto with Napoli. So
right, yeah.
Looking at other clubs, it's come out today. Alexis McAllister's just signed for Liverpool for an astonishing bargain of 35 million. Obviously, he's coming to the end of his contract, but to get a World Cup winner of his quality for 35 million is something else.
No, that's good. That's good value, actually, isn't it? And you get your business done early as well. It helps because you can go on the preseason with them. You can get embedded in. That's I think quite important.
That's the one position they needed, wasn't it? That midfielder, because I think you look at the team. Liverpool have had the same team from 2018 onwards, from when they obviously went and won everything really in 2 or 3 years. But they've had this team where you're looking at Salah's in his mid-30s, Henderson, Milner, Firmino's obviously just moved on, Mane's moved on now. You're looking at Alisson, Van Dijk. It's a really aging squad, bar 1 or 2. So bringing in McAllister is a really good signing for that.
Yeah, it is.
Has there been any snippets as to where United stand? I know we discussed it last week with Mason Greenwood. While we're talking about
something came out today saying that it's the Glazers are going to be making the decision, consulting with John Murtagh. So it's looking like that could come to an end. But I don't know if you have seen it. There's this thing with Anthony that's come out in the last 2 days.
We need to be careful. Just need to be careful on that because there are allegations at the moment.
Yeah, it's allegations at the moment, but obviously that could stem into a bigger story. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's not going to happen. So yeah, that's been reported, but it's only ESPN in Brazil coming out with that. There's not been much talk else around that. So, but with the Mason Greenwood thing, it's looking like it's going to be the Glazers' decision coinciding with John Murtagh, and that's going to be the final decision. I think that's been something that they thought we'll leave it till the end of the season, so paper talk, but around transfers will sort of become, so it won't become a massive story like it could be.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, it's a case of we need to do our business early. We need to, and in some ways, don't go for some of the obvious candidates potentially, because I would like to see us get somebody who is got more potential that we see being realized earlier. So that's why I'm quite interested in some of the non-Harry Kane type stories, because it could be
like the Brighton business model in the sense that they send scouts out all across sort of South. They send scouts out all over, obviously like every club does, but they seem to pick up, their business model is pick up these gems with 3 or 4 million, such as Enciso, Mitoma, Caicedo. Obviously, we were in for, I don't know if you guys know this, we were in for Caicedo before he signed for Brighton from I think it was a Colombian or whatever his origin nation is, and the club he played for. We tried to buy him for around 4 million before he went to Brighton, and we didn't offer him a guarantee that he could be playing first team football. And then we lost him to Brighton. So that's one of them things where Brighton's business model is a lot better than ours. And you can see that this season.
With fair play to a player like that, they want to play. And they know if they do well at Brighton, it can actually long-term bump up their price and bump up their salary.
Guys, can I just butt in and say Mike Keegan's just tweeted saying, I don't know how reliable Mike Keegan is in some sense, but he said a new Qatar bid has been made. But he's the only one that's saying that, and I do think that the way the majority of Sky and say Romano, Ornstein, Laurie Woodward, they're not coming out with major stories on the Qataris, and I think Radcliffe is. I'm sorry to butt in with the owner stuff, but I've just seen that come up on my Twitter feed. So obviously, I don't know what's going to hold with the ownership stuff like that.
Actually, I think it's time that you have butted in, although I wouldn't call it butted in, because what I was going to say in answer to Rod's. We need to do our business early. I don't think we can, Rod, because the sale of the club hasn't been completed. So, if you were in a position where you're making a bid for a club, you wouldn't like to see loads of money being spent without, you having some sort of say in it. So, I think we're in a weak position in terms of early shopping, to be honest.
Yeah, so I'll just go through that again. Sorry, guys. So Sheikh Jassim of Qatar has submitted a 5th bid for Manchester United. An improved offer comes with the Friday deadline. After then, offer stands with no further engagement in negotiations. So it's looking like this could be the last bid from Qatar. And he wants it done for 100% of the club, and he has a strong desire to provide transfers for the club.
Well, I tell you now, that bid will be, not that I know anything about it, but I reckon that 100% bid for the club will be valued at 6 billion, because that's the number they've been holding out for. It's the number that Jim Ratcliffe's bid ultimately values the club at, even though he's buying 80% of the club. And that's the golden number. But coming back to your point there, Rick, on the transfers is, if this was any other business, it would have a pot of money for transfers available, and they would actually be talking to the potential owners and say, that's what's on the table. If you're going to put any more money in, that's your job. So we have to be able to run the club as business as usual. There should be a transfer pot out there. Who knows what it would be, but the bigger risk I feel is that whoever comes in, they want a trophy signing. And we end up with somebody that is thrown into the mix as a trophy signing. I would hope to goodness that Ten Hag would be able to have the authority to say, I want that player, I don't want that player. Don't do that to me. Do not impose some worldly player on me as a trophy signing late in the transfer window that we may need or not need, but if it doesn't fit in with the strategy. That's my fear of this thing rolling on into the summer, really.
I mean, I'll link two things into that and say there's always the floating sort of silly season rumours that you get on transfer windows where you've got Neymar who's out of contract at the minute. That's sort of the story where he's getting linked to every big club under the sun. He would be the ideal worst signing, if that makes sense. He'd be that signing that no one wants. Only people that sort of want him as this star. It'd be another Ronaldo. But I'll link back into the transfer thing and say we need to be very careful how we do our business because we've got a lot of players going out, leaving the club this summer.
Exactly.
Who are out of contract. So we need to tie the likes of Rashford down to a contract soon. Obviously, it's coming out that he's close to signing one. We've already got Garnacho and Dalot coming back on a new contract. The De Gea thing is a very contradicted point that everyone's got different opinions on. But the amount of players leaving the club, I could list off 10 right now, but I'm not going to because it'd be a waste of time. But I could list off 10 right now players who are sitting on our bench or floating around the first team squad who have been injured, who are going to be leaving the club. So I think we need to be careful in how we do our business. But I think we need to get these bench players as well. We don't need to just be looking to improve our first team. Yep. We need to get these bench players that they're happy to just be a team player, but at the same time, when they step onto the pitch, they can provide that quality.
And you want to see some really real competition coming from within the reserve teams, pushing the first team players. So, I'm quite optimistic. I don't know why, because why should I be optimistic? You put the FA Cup aside, we've had a good season. We can see a direction of travel. We've got a manager who's got, I think, a strategy. He's got a brand of football that we like. And the ownership thing aside, we've got Champions League football. That is a draw to some players. It's a good draw.
Sorry, Rod. That's why Kim Min-jae of Napoli is looking to choose us over other clubs. Yeah. Because when we sent scouts to watch him in January, he was uncertain over Manchester United because we did not have Champions League football at that time secured.
So, and you could disagree with why would a player need Champions League player at that point in time? You look at the club bigger in the direction going, but it's been the case for now, goodness knows how many years. Champions League attracts a certain player. Players look for it. They like the platform of it. So it's a good position. Can we talk about some wider things outside of United? So I'm really intrigued about the guy, the Celtic boss who's turned up at Tottenham. Yeah, I know nothing about him.
That's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, his background is very, very interesting. I watched a little bit of a documentary on it, and he comes from a really disadvantaged background, and he's the sort of guy who's had to fight for survival through his childhood and his teenage years, and then broke into football, albeit not at a high level, but then has become this sort of super coach, Australian coach. But then we've seen other past managers from the likes of Celtic and Rangers come to the Premier League, and they've not been able to do it. So
it's a really big step up, I think, isn't it? It's a really
I don't think he's one of these players. I think one of these coaches. I think why Tottenham have probably brought him in. He's a motivator, isn't he? And he believes totally in a bit like Ten Hag. Well, a bit like what Ten Hag said he was, but it's not working out that way yet. He's not got the players to play the way he wants to play, but he plays attacking football. But again, you can do that in a league like the Scottish Premier League. You can dominate teams, throw everybody forward. I think he's probably definitely worth a gamble by Tottenham. I don't think they have many other options open to them, really, do they?
It's weird with this Postecoglou story because obviously he just won the domestic treble up in Scotland with Celtic. But the week before, he said he wasn't even acknowledging the Spurs job, and obviously it's coming out from Sky this week that he's very close to signing as the manager. So Although I agree with what Rick, what you said, I think we've seen all these managers reject Tottenham in these last couple of months, and when they sack Conte, he must be seventh on the list by now, with the managers they've tried to negotiate with and not got. So it's looking. I mean, I said to Rod off air, I give him 6 months. Like, I really don't think if Harry Kane leaves and he comes in, I think the main thing for Spurs at this minute, if Harry Kane leaves and they get the money for him, they invest it well. They get a manager they can support and back. Yeah. I think they should be all right.
I think it's such a non-Levy-like signing as a manager in one way.
Yeah.
And Levy's all about the big optics and the jingle jangle. And the thing I would worry about this guy coming in is his first thing he's going to have to be able to do is manage the ego of Daniel Levy, because Levy, I think, likes to manage the football club quite directly. So I think you give him 6 months. I think that's. I actually just dealing with the politics of Tottenham and the politics of the English Premier League could be a big risk for him. Anything else in the gossip or other news before we look at the 2 European fixtures this week at all, Tom?
I mean, I'll just butt in and say Mike Keegan's just tweeted again about the Qatar bid and saying it just falls short of 6 billion for the bid. So that might be one of the things that pushes the Glazers again towards Radcliffe, because it falls a little bit short. And if it's coming out now saying that this is the last bid from Qatar, and it's so here we go. The Qatari Attest offer went in earlier this week and is understood to be a circa of $6.5 billion. So obviously with the exchange rate, that's about what, 5.7, 5.8 we're looking at around. So obviously Radcliffe's bidded 5.9 to 6. So yeah.
Well, I still think potentially Radcliffe could be in the driving seat, because I still think that the two brothers quite like to be linked to United. I think they like to be involved in it, and I do think that's 6 billion.
It's their ego, isn't it?
It's the ego.
Their ego
and a 6 billion price tag. 5.9 is not the same as 6. And it might be silly, but but we will see. We will see. It'll happen at some point, and hopefully it doesn't happen on the last day of the season or last day before the season starts. Let's get this done. Let's get out of there, and let's get a plan together. Really, Can we talk about the 2 big European ties that are coming up this week? So tonight it is the Europa Conference League. It's Fiorentina versus West Ham, 8:00 as we speak.
Free to watch as well, just for saying. It's free to watch for everyone. So what the BT
I'm glad you've said that. I didn't realise that.
Yeah, BT Sport are streaming all the games for free on YouTube. They've done it for the past 2 years, and they've continued to do it. I mean, I'll still be in the pub going to watch it, but I think it's good for everyone that's sat at home that's going to be aren't subscribed to BT Sport, because obviously the prices are extortionate. But it's good that they've streamed the games for free.
That's really good. Good indeed.
Didn't know that.
I think it'll be a good cracking match.
Yeah. I think it'll be a good game. I do hope West Ham do win. I don't know if you guys agree, but I hope just to see an English club do well.
Yeah,
obviously West Ham are direct rivals of ours. So.
And I didn't realise that Thomas Souček is playing for his original. He's playing at the ground of his original club
in Prague.
That's quite a motivator, isn't it?
I will say on this game, I know it's away from the game, but the ticket allocation is ridiculous. Like they've given quite a small percentage to the Fiorentina and West Ham fans, and then a lot of it is corporate. I know we see this at all European finals, but it is kind of a talking point.
I just looking at here on the BBC site, it's a 20,000. They're just under 19,370 seater stadium, of which West Ham fans have got 4,390. I mean, they could fill that easily with 20,000.
Yeah, they could fill the whole stadium. West Ham if they wanted to. So, but no, I mean, it'll be a cracking game. I think West Ham will win, but I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, well,
I think they've got the quality to be able to win it. Must be honest, I don't really know very much about Fiorentina. Only that they're not a top 4 team again, are they? They've finished. I don't know where they finished in Serie A, but they're not a great team. But West Ham are not a great team. But West Ham have got that quality. The quality doesn't always gel together now, but
Yeah,
I think they've got enough quality to be able to win
I mean,
it.
Fiorentina finished 8th in Serie A, so it's
Right.
one of them where obviously West Ham did finish bottom half of the table, but the only thing that worries me about West Ham with this game is their experience in situations like this, because they had that semi-final against Frankfurt in the Europa League last year that they lost, which arguably they could have won. They had a lot of chances to win the game. So yeah, obviously the next European
I think it could come down to big tactical decisions during the game, substitutions, that type of thing. And I think Moyes will, if he'll have a big say in it either way. So let's hope they do well, because I'd say, even though I never liked David Moyes at United, he's really bounced back and done very well for himself.
Oh yeah.
Last couple and then it's the big one on Saturday, the Champions League. City versus Inter Milan, another English versus Italian cup final. Does anybody see anything other than a City win here?
No.
What I see is the typical Italian approach to this game will be like the England final with Italy. They will use every trick in the book on the day to try and upset City. Whether that will work remains to be seen. And what you have to look at is that Inter Milan didn't finish. They finished third. I think a good 20 odd points.
Yeah, they were more than 20 points behind Napoli.
Yeah, so they're not right up there. However, football's a strange game, and I'm clutching at straws, because I know we said we wouldn't talk about United, but I desperately don't want that treble repeating. I want that to be preserved for another few seasons at least. So I'm praying for an Inter Milan miracle.
I mean, we're looking at Inter Milan's team. They've got a lot of ex-United players in there, haven't they? They've got Darmian, Lukaku, Sanchez, Mkhitaryan.
Yeah.
And the way they play football, I think, has gone quite under the radar this season, because their goalkeeper, Onana, when they're in possession of the ball, he steps in and creates this sort of third centre-back role.
Yeah.
And it's quite similar in a sense to what City do with their back line, of how we saw on Saturday, last week in the cup final. Ortega in Man City's goal, his distribution was absolutely unreal during the game. I think we saw, obviously linking it back to United quickly, De Gea's distribution that whole game was awful. But Ortega played one pass in particular where he drilled it straight across the ground into Haaland's feet, about 50 yards. It was unreal. And Onana can definitely do the same. So I think if Inter do get possession, they need to just be careful and not get caught out. But linking it back to Rod's point, I don't see anything but City winning this game.
To be honest, and I would say they are the best team in Europe, and in terms of the options they have, their forcefulness of their play, they've got big players physically as well as temperament. I would be hugely surprised if City lost that game, because they are playing the best football, I think, of any club side on the planet, really. To be honest,
I mean, even if City do win it, although us as United fans will hate the fact that City win it, because not just as a club mentality, but all our mates aren't going to stop talking about it, who are City fans, are they really? But I think from a neutral point of view, you have to applaud, although they've got the charge, you have to applaud how good they play football.
totally.
They are an absolutely brilliant football inside from
yeah.
a neutral point of view.
Yeah, I agree. And as much as it hurts me, that's the thing you got to say is, just as the Barcelona teams were lovely to watch, the brand of football they play is better than, say, a Liverpool's brand of football or Madrid's brand of football. Or traditionally, I like the way they play football. They play it on the deck, and so of course they are big rivals of ours as United fans. You look at the bigger picture and go, they have been good all season, and they've got the best manager both in this league, if not across Europe. He's proven it in multiple countries now. But are you watching it, guys?
I'm at work, so no. No, I might blue tap my phone to the wall and stick it on YouTube. But I mean, if they win, I won't be. I'll watch the highlights afterwards, but no,
Fred?
I won't be.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether I watched the whole game, but my prediction. I'm going with a surprise 1-0 Inter Milan. I think they'll find a way to score, and then they'll frustrate City for the rest of the match.
For mine, 3-0 Man City. I think City will steamroll them.
I'm at a wedding actually, so it just turns out. So clearly not of a City fan.
Let's just hope the groom isn't a City fan.
Well, I think City win. I think they win it 2-1.
I think they win it comfortably, in my opinion.
Yeah, the one thing I say is an Italian side, I think, might frustrate them a lot better, a lot more than an English side at the moment. Well, look, guys, good to speak to you again. That's another episode of now what's called Theatres of Dreams. We'll be coming back to you across the summer looking at transfers. We'll probably do a podcast next week. I have on a review of the Champions League final. I will be up in Scotland doing it, but hopefully I'll have time to do it. So for now, from Rick, myself, and Tom Jolley, that's it for another episode. Speak to you soon.
Bye.